Hello and welcome to the Street Crime Australia YouTube channel. Please don't forget to like, share, comment and subscribe. Today we look at the case of Christopher Skase. Christopher Charles Skase was born on the 18th of September 1948. He was an Australian businessman who later became one of the country's most wanted fugitives after his business empire crashed and he fled to Mallorca, Spain. Mr. Skase was born into a wealthy Melbourne family. His father was Charles Skase, the 1948 winner of the Melbourne Sun area, a prominent on-air personality on radio station of 3DB, including his role as a star of a live-to-air program, The Happy Gang, in the 1950s. Christopher Skase was educated at the Malvern and Caulfield grammar schools. He began his career as a stockbroker, but he soon became a finance journalist instead, working at the Sun News Pictorial. In 1975, he purchased Quintex, a small Tasmanian company. Mr. Skase slowly developed Quintex and over several years turned it into one of Australia's larger corporations. By the late 1980s, the Quintex group was worth 1.5 billion Australian dollars. Mr. Skase owned 5 resorts, as well as interest in 7 national TV networks and the Brisbane Bears football club. On the eve of the 1990 economic recession, his 2 Mirage resorts in Queensland were among the largest in the country, and one of them, the Sheraton Mirage Port Douglas Resort, played a key role in putting the formerly small town of Port Douglas on the international tourist map. Mr. Skase became known for his displays of wealth, with a lavish 40th birthday party in 1988 and a company Christmas party that cost $450,000. In one particular incident, he had his private jet fly in from Port Douglas to Melbourne to pick up a dress for his wife Pixie. By 1989, interest rates had risen. An attempt to buy MGM Film Studios fell through, and Mr. Skase was forced to sell half of his resort to Japanese investors. In the months that followed, it became clear that Mr. Skase and the Quintex group have overextended themselves. According to a 1998 report by the ABC program Four Corners, Mr. Skase had begun obtaining and moving money into foreign bank accounts in July 1989. Despite efforts lasting more than a decade, Max Donnelly, the creditor's trustee, was unable to trace much of the missing money. At a meeting in October, Mr. Skase began to fall out with the Quintex board. He demanded that the board pay $13.5 million to a private company that he owned. The board refused to ratify the payment, but soon discovered that the payment had already been made. Mr. Skase then demanded that the board give him a pay rise, and threatened to resign if he did not receive it. The board refused, and several members themselves threatened to resign. One of the directors reported the incident to the Australian Securities Commission. The creditors moved in, and Quintex collapsed. Mr. Skase was forced to sell the 7 network for a tiny portion of what he had paid for it. In the end, Mr. Skase was more than $700 million in debt. He began to parcel up his remaining wealth, including $900,000 worth of antiques and furniture. He was charged with improperly using his position to obtain management fees, briefly arrested and spent the night in jail. However, he subsequently was released and allowed to regain his passport, promptly fled the country. His discovery on the Spanish island of Mallorca in 1991 by the Sydney Morning Herald sparked intense media interest. In 1994, the Australian Securities Commission assembled a case against Mr. Skase, with assistance from the former Mr. Skase associate Lawrence van der Plat, and began to chase him in earnest. Throughout the 1990s, successive Australian governments, in combination with Max Donnelly, attempted to have Mr. Skase extradited from Spain with no success. Mr. Skase claimed that he was unable to travel due to a life-threatening lung condition. This was disputed by the Australian government, who released a video filmed by some Australian tourists which featured Mr. Skase easily walking around on a local beach. During this period, Mr. Skase also attempted to build a new business empire and continued to live in a multi-million-dollar mansion. On one incident, television personality Andrew Denton organised a public subscription to hire a bounty hunter to kidnap Mr. Skase. However, after raising $250,000, the idea was called off on legal advice. In May 1998, the Australian government cancelled Mr. Skase's passport. Mr. Skase was ordered to leave Mallorca on the 23rd of July, but logged an appeal. The extradition process was still tied up with the courts, when the following month he became a citizen of Dominica. At the point, numerous commentators suggested that the chase was over and that there was nothing more that could be done to bring Mr. Skase back to Australia. By 2001, both the Australian government and Mr. Donnelly were starting to grow weary of the large costs of continuing to chase Mr. Skase. Nevertheless, there were renewed speculation in January that Mr. Skase would soon be deported from Spain, in which case it would have been legally possible to bring him back to Australia, as Dominica already had an extradition treaty. However, he became ill and died of stomach cancer in Mallorca on the 5th of August 2001, before any further proceedings had taken place. A 2001 film, Let's Get Skase, is based on the invented plot to kidnap Christopher Skase in Mallorca. TISM bassist Jock Cheese's solo album, Plata, features a song, Totally Addicted to Skase, whose title parodies Addicted to Bass, the media coverage around the chase for Mr. Skase. Thank you for joining us today. What are your opinions on Mr. Chase becoming one of Australia's most wanted fugitives? If he was brought to court, do you believe he would have been found guilty or not guilty? What do you think happened to all the money that Mr. Skase had? Please let us know what you think in the comments below. Thank you for joining us today. If you enjoyed this content, please don't forget to like and share. And if you're new to the channel and you want to see more Street Crime Australia content, hit that subscribe button and press the bell so you can join us on the next video. Thank you for joining us, and until next time, stay safe.